Now, this chap is Zoids Zarwolf. I've no idea where they got the name from, but he's something of an oddity because he is what is known as a Super 1000 Zoid. And as you can see, they got terribly excited about him at one point. And interestingly, I've just noticed looking at this badge that although it's clearly him, the sticker number is different to the one that he's got on the side of his neck in this model, which is decidedly curious. But basically, this was one of the Zoids that came out right at the end of the UK run of Zoids. And I've been sort of looking at a few of the old New Century Zoids cartoons when I noticed that I think it was called the Lightning Sykes at one point, but it's better known as the Command Wolf, was very, very similar to the Zarwolf here. So I thought I'd get myself an example to have a look at, and I've just done some research now because unfortunately he wasn't shipped very cleverly, so some pieces had come adrift from him and I was trying to figure out what went where afterwards. And he's also fallen prey to this, which is potentially quite an important little piece of plastic because it was keeping this leg where it should be, which of course it now isn't. However, it was mobile before that broke. He's got a tail piece there, but it doesn't seem to want to stay up in the version that I've got here. And I don't know if I have actually got all his parts because I have no instructions for him. So, nevertheless, we had this version of the Zarwolf with an improved motor over the previous motorised wind-up versions, because it is just a wind-up motor as per the normal small Zoids. But you'll notice that the style of this one is considerably more sophisticated than what we've seen from smaller Zoids prior to this. In fact, this is more sort of mid-sized Zoid, really. Now, I'm not sure whether this is just age that this makes this keep dropping off, but it's not really held on. But it's got a sort of gunner seat to it, which again is unusual for a smaller Zoid. So there should have been a second pilot with this as well, but again I didn't get that with this one. So he has this sort of back-mounted gun that fits in there. These sort of I don't know if these are supposed to be exhausts or sort of rear-firing guns, maybe the latter. But his cockpit is very, very stylistic and stylized, and it's got open jaws. But basically, this, I believe it's from 87, this model apparently, but this 87 Zoid in the UK was actually then sort of reused right the way down the line in the Zoids animated series and indeed in later models as the Command Wolf, and got repainted and recoloured several times. But the actual design has not radically changed. It's had different attachments for the back and so on, from what I can find out. But generally speaking, it's been this model ever since. And these guys I think were incredibly short-lived in the UK because they didn't appear in the comics. I've seen on Zoidstar.com that there was and in fact this is referenced on the Zoids Wiki as well, that there was this promotional comic that came out that had this guy and Zarwolf, I think, in it as well. And these guys were described as Zoids that had been created by the automated Zoid factories to counter Krark's United Zoid Army. So they didn't actually owe allegiance themselves to either blue or red Zoids. But as another Zoid notices in the comic, he does have a gold pilot. And this is a slight difference to normal, because this gold pilot also has a little sort of steering wheel. They never had this in the earlier versions. And this actually sort of flips out to allow this pilot to come out. So it's quite clever in the sense that it does keep the android from getting lost quite so easily. So that's clever. But you can see this has a lot of little sort of play detail to it, which maybe the other Zoids, the other smaller Zoids did, but there's just something that is that little bit smoother and sort of smarter about the way this one is designed, I think, compared to some of the earlier iterations. And I don't know whether or not this motor will really do anything now, because I've succeeded in breaking it fairly badly in trying to fix it. I basically broke it, but you can see it's got quite a bit of oomph to it. So there's a little bit of life in it still, even despite the damage to its sort of leg component there. But it's kind of vaguely workable. It's vaguely workable. And I'm going to try and glue that back together, hopefully, and I'll see if I can fix it to some extent. You don't see these very often on eBay, and I grabbed it purely because I'd randomly got that little badge that, again, eBay has thrown out as a recommendation to me. But I do have a memory of seeing those Zoids, maybe in the comic I've just mentioned it on Zoidstar, actually. But I'm pretty sure I saw that in real life at some point, probably towards the end of my time looking at things like Zoids. So I think that is probably why I sort of thought I would go ahead and get this, because I never had any of these. I did wonder if I might have had one that looked a bit like a bear. And I remember that I did want the saber that came out, but again, that wasn't one that was that I ever ended up with in my collection. So I think these were very much the future of how Zoids were going to look and be. And clearly the motor on it is much better, because to be able to handle that much plastic, that is a much stronger motor than the original wind-up motors were. So, it was clearly the next iteration, and yet sadly the Zoids just disappeared from UK shelves, and I don't know if they ever actually made a comeback in the UK. We did get the Zoids 2 line, where we got a sort of chromed up versions of the Zoids, a bit like Generation 2 Transformers. But I think there was quite a gap between them and the original Zoids line. So, there was this sort of gap, and then they went away again after that. So these really were the last of the original line of Zoids that came out in the UK. So that's sparked some memories for you, perhaps. And I will try and glue them together again a bit. That's it for now. Do like and subscribe, and I'll see you again. Cheers for now.